Previously, on the Reading in Japanese series, having a reading flow in the first place was still a challenge. It was not flowing, it was not fluid. Reading in Japanese might seem like an impossible task with all the kanji, hiragana, and katakana. And sure, it is a skill that is difficult to master and takes years, in fact. But it doesn't mean it is impossible. And I was there once myself too, feeling like written Japanese was a puzzle with too many pieces to solve. But then I did one thing that set me on the path of success, and it was to start reading in Japanese. And I also want you to start. Minasan konnichiwa, RIJ desu. Hi everyone, my name is Ali. Welcome back to this channel. Today we're going to cover one of the most asked topic ever on both my channel and on my Instagram account, which is how to start reading in Japanese. What do I recommend? What is my advice? So today I'm going to put on my Coach Ali hat because I am a language coach. I coach others on their own journey with their target languages, including Japanese, of course. And I am also well placed, I think, to actually tell others about what I think they should start with, since I have also learned how to read in Japanese by myself. To date, I have read over 169 books now in Japanese, which is a lot. I have started my journey with the language in 2019. I have started reading in Japanese from the end of that same year. The questions I'm going to be answering today are how to prepare for reading in Japanese, what kind of reading materials you can start with, and where to find books in Japanese. So our first topic today is going to be how to prepare, how can you get yourself ready to start reading in Japanese. The first step is going to be to learn your kana. Learning your kana, including both the hiragana characters and the katakana characters. It is absolutely necessary that you guys master these before you start reading in Japanese. If I put it another way, in my opinion, you shouldn't start reading anything in Japanese counting on Romaji characters, so the transcription of Japanese characters in Romanized letters. In fact, I would advise you to drop Romaji as soon as possible because they should only be here to help you learn kana and to help you understand how to pronounce kana, how they are read. Once you know this, get rid of them. You should avoid them at all costs. To learn your kana, I recommend you the app Write It Japanese, which is the one that I used to learn my kana. It was great. It took me only a few weeks, and by the end of my use of the app, I knew all of my kana, both hiragana and katakana. So I really recommend you this app. I know that Duolingo also does that. I think it is quite similar to how Write It Japanese works as well. So you can also use Duolingo if you like. The second step you're going to want to cover before you start reading in Japanese is to get familiar with the most common kanji characters. Now, answering one of the most asked questions, which is, do you need to know all of the kanji characters that the Japanese language contains before you start reading in Japanese? The answer is very simple. Absolutely not. You do not need to know all of the kanji characters before you start reading. In fact, reading practice helps you learn the kanji characters. So there is no point in trying to learn all of the kanji characters before you start reading in that sense. So you don't need to know all of the kanji characters, but you do need to be familiar, at least, not master, but be familiar with the most common kanji characters, which will necessarily appear in whatever you read, essentially. So to start reading in Japanese, I think it is good to at least know the kanji characters that are to be known for levels N5 and N4 of the JLPT, the JLPT being the Japanese language proficiency test. You know, if you follow the exam structure and what is required for each level, it is a good indication of what you could know before you start reading. So in that sense, I would advise you to know at least the N5 and N4 kanji set of characters. And then on top of that, if you want a further head start, you can also push to learn level N3 kanji characters before you start reading in Japanese. And for all of that, I have some some textbook series and other types of resources which I can recommend to you. So for kanji specifically, I would recommend you the Matome series. Then the Kanji Master series. I have never used the Kanji Master series myself. However, every single one of my coaching clients have told me that this was a great series and that I should start recommending it. So here is me recommending it. Apparently it is absolutely wonderful. And then from level N4 kanji, I would recommend you the Shinkanzen Master series of textbooks. So for N4 kanji and N3 kanji. So this is to study the kanji characters, and then once you've studied them, you should practice them. So using quizzes and flashcards and games and whatever you can find. I can recommend you the website I used, not only for kanji but also for vocab, which is the japaneseclass.jp. It also has an app, and once you are familiar with those kanji characters, then it's time to move on to the next step. The next step is to get familiar with the basic Japanese grammar. To start reading in Japanese, it's good to know at least the grammar points and understand the sentence structure for level N5 and N4, just like for the kanji. You could definitely, if you want a head start, also start studying the level N3 grammar, but you don't need to master it before you start reading, because there are reading materials out there which don't really contain N3 level grammar, so you can definitely start reading before you know N3 grammar. To study grammar, I can recommend you the following resources, and in this specific order, because I think there is a difficulty level progression here in the resources that I'm going to give you. First, I recommend you to use the Bunpo app or something similar, then the Matome series, then the Try series, and finally the Shinkanzen Master series of books. In this order of progression, you will have seen the same grammar points at least 4 times round, explained in different ways, and you will also cover lots of exercises in each of these resources which will help you master those grammar points. Those are also the resources that I have used myself to learn grammar and to get familiar with it. Step number 4 is to get the right tools. So to start reading in Japanese, all you really need with you is a good dictionary for both vocab, so the kanji characters and just the vocab words that go with them, and the grammar patterns that you don't know or you don't recognize when you read, okay? If you have a good dictionary for each of these things, this is basically the only thing you need with you. And this doesn't only work for Japanese, it works for any language, any target language in which you want to start reading. Just get a good dictionary and you're set. You're good to go. If you're looking for an app that allows you to look up kanji and vocab as a whole, I recommend the app Yomiwa. This is pretty much the only app I have ever used. It's never failed me. It's absolutely amazing. It allows you to write the kanji on your screen for faster search, and this has helped me greatly to actually master the kanji characters as well, because I wrote them so many times on my little screen to look them up. For the grammar patterns, you can look them up on Yomiwa as well, but I would recommend you a more complete resource to look up the grammar, which is the website takoboto.jp, which I also use. I've discovered it, I think, right in the middle of my reading journey, so I haven't used it from the start, but I wish I had it from the start because it's a very, very useful website. Finally, I would recommend you to watch my own video from 3 years ago on the topic of reading Japanese online, because in that video I actually gave you all of the web extensions that I use to help me with kanji readings online that you can put on your Chrome browser to add furigana to all of the kanji characters present on one web page in particular, and you can just toggle it on and off and you will basically render any web page that is written in Japanese interactive. So you'll be able to see the furigana, look up the vocab words, and also look up the grammar patterns. I think that once you get those tools lined up, you can basically read anything. Step 5. is gonna be to practice vocab recognition. So I can't really recommend you to entirely learn vocab words for like such and such levels of the JLPT, because it's too much in my opinion. It will take you so long actually to master the vocab. I think it's much easier for you to just start getting used to the most common vocab by doing vocab quizzes, flashcards of vocab quizzes, and that's how you will get used to the vocab. And you don't really need to learn a certain amount of vocab before you start reading, simply for the reason that you have no guarantee that you will find this vocab in your reading materials. There are too many words, so you will learn the vocab by encountering it during your reading practice, during your reading immersion practice. So really, I would advise you to start as soon as possible, start reading as soon as possible, and not wait for you knowing a certain amount of vocab words. What happens with vocab is that there is a certain amount that you can study by yourself without seeing it in context. There are different ways that you can study vocab, but whatever way you choose will never replace the practice of you finding that vocab somewhere and trying to recognize it in context. So for that, to prepare you for that kind of encounter while you do reading immersion, I would recommend you to do as many vocab quizzes as possible so that you get familiar with this specific practice of recognizing the words in a random manner. The one website that I used myself for that specifically was, again, the JapaneseClass.jp website. It is shaped like a game, so you basically earn experience as long as you answer correctly the vocab questions, and in that way it really helped me go through like I don't know how many vocab words without even thinking about it. It was just a game, and I really liked how it was shaped and how it was presented. It really worked with me, so hopefully it can also work with you guys. So that's how I would recommend you to get started, to get ready to start reading in Japanese. So all of those steps, except for the first one, can be done in parallel, of course. The first one though, I would advise you to get it done, learn your kana before you start all of the other steps. But from step 2 to step 5, you can basically do everything in parallel. Right, so now that that's covered, we're gonna see what kind of reading materials you can start reading with. The first kind of reading material you can start with are interactive reading materials. I have used interactive reading materials myself since the beginning of my reading journey in Japanese. They have helped me get through the first phase of my journey, which was the most difficult, of course, and they really acted as support for me to not get too scared with written Japanese. The ones I have used are the website Japanese.io and the Satori Reader app and website. The benefits of using interactive reading materials are that, first of all, they're accessible online. There are free ones. You don't necessarily need to pay to access them. Your reading experience will be, of course, interactive because words and sentences will be clickable with integrated dictionaries and sometimes entire translations for you to not get lost in what you're reading. And another benefit is that you can find things on those resources that are really enjoyable to read, even at a beginner level, which, you know, is not necessarily the case with other types of beginner reading materials. So those are all the benefits. Now for the disadvantages, the text difficulty may be hard to judge if it's not indicated, so you may find sometimes certain texts that are way too difficult for you to read at that point, so you would need to figure this out by yourself. And another disadvantage is that you may start to rely too much on the interactive elements and the translations, for example, so that when you go from an interactive reading material to, for example, a paper reading material, so a book, right? It may be hard for you to adjust because you won't be able to click on the words on the paper. So this is just something to keep in mind. So you can't really start feeling too reliant on this kind of material because then you won't be able to read anything else. So be careful there. But apart from this, I think those are one of the greatest way you can start reading in your target language. The second kind of material you can use to start your reading journey are the graded readers for Japanese learners. So specifically for the people learning Japanese as a second language. Personally, I have never used those. I actually, for the most part, didn't know they existed back when I started reading in Japanese. So that's one of the reasons why I actually never used them. And also because I didn't look for them. But I know of certain ones that you can use. My personal recommendation now to my clients when they ask me what kind of graded readers they could use, I do give them the Tadoku graded readers as a good place to start. But then you can find a very good list of all the graded readers available on the Dokusho Book Club blog, which I love. So I will link, of course, this article down below. So take a look at this article so that you know what kind of graded readers you can find out there. The benefits of the graded readers for Japanese learners are that they may be more accessible than regular books for Japanese learners. They are always classified per level of difficulty. The length of the texts also increases gradually, so there is a very good gradual progression in those graded readers so that you're not overwhelmed at the start. Now for the disadvantages, I need to tell you that actually a lot of people do not like these because the stories are apparently quite boring. People say that those are not really interesting. The third type of reading material you can start with are the graded readers, but this time not for Japanese learners but for Japanese natives. So what the kids here in Japan use to start reading. So they are also classified by level of difficulty, and they also gradually increase in terms of difficulty, in terms of kanji characters that are contained, in terms of length as well. And I have actually only used those to start reading in Japanese. I have read a lot in the Juppun de Yomeru series. I love this series. I have read, I think, about 10 books in total in that series, so definitely helped me in my reading journey. And I also love the Yomeba Wakaru series. Those are amazing graded readers for children. If you want some, don't look anywhere else. Those are the best ones in my opinion. The benefits of graded readers for Japanese natives are that they contain all the furigana and the kanji. So furigana being the readings in kana above or next to the kanji characters, which help you know how the kanji characters are pronounced and how to read the vocab words. Another benefit is that the grammar is also generally less complex and more accessible. The font is bigger for an easier reading experience, especially at the beginning when you are still trying to recognize the kanji characters. So having a bigger font is definitely helpful there because you don't need to squint your eyes trying to decipher the kanji characters, which is a big advantage. And then, like I said at the beginning, the books are of course classified per level of difficulty. In this case, because those are for Japanese natives, they classify them per elementary school year because they start reading from elementary school. Basically, the first year of elementary school is the first level of the graded reader. Now, for the disadvantages, these books may not be easily accessible where you are. And another disadvantage is that some series are more interesting than others, especially if you're not too into children's stories, because some of those books are only a collection of children's stories. And I know that a lot of you guys actually don't really like this kind of stories, so that may be also a disadvantage. Otherwise, I recommend them 100%. And now the fourth kind of reading materials I would advise you to start with are the light novels with furigana. Now, the light novels with furigana are definitely meant for beginners at reading in Japanese, but not the first kind of beginners, okay? So I wouldn't recommend you to start reading those until you are comfortable with the grammar and the vocab and kanji characters for level N3 of the JRPT, because those are definitely up one level in terms of difficulty and you would struggle if you're only level N4, let's say. So be careful there. Those are definitely more difficult than the other three types of reading materials I have just given you. However, if you're up for the challenge, then definitely I recommend them 100%. I will link down below another article from the Dokusho Club blog, which actually lists all of the different collections and all of the different kinds of light novels that you can find out there on the Japanese market. In this article, you will also see a breakdown of what each color means for each of these light novels. So you will have the breakdown of, you know, the green cover, blue cover, and yellow covered books. And those are all collections from which I have read myself. So definitely take a look at this article. You will understand everything you need need to know about these books and what kind of stories they have in each collection as well. A big thanks to Dokusho Club for their blog, because it's absolutely amazing and I think you can definitely get a lot of very useful information, so absolutely amazing blog. Now, the benefits are that they contain a great variety of stories. You can basically find any type of story in those collections, so there is something for everyone. That's a great benefit. They contain all of the furigana on the kanji, that's the purpose, so you'll have all of the readings you need on all the kanji in the text. The grammar is also generally less complex and more accessible than regular books. Now, for the disadvantages, again, these books may not be easily accessible for you where you are, and some of the stories may feel a bit too childish depending on what you like. Definitely that's a disadvantage again, because there is a great variety of stories, yes, but some of the stories are really meant for children. Right, and now onto the final part of this video, which is where can you find books in Japanese? Another of the most asked questions ever. It really depends on where you live around the world. But generally, if you're not physically in Japan, it's going to be difficult for you to shop for books physically at bookstores, although not impossible, we'll see that in a minute, and it will be easier for you to shop books online. I'm gonna start with the shopping online category. So if you live outside of Japan, it's gonna take a bit of ingenuity for you to find books in Japanese easily. But overall, I would recommend you to take a look at this article by Tofugu on the best Japanese ebooks retailers for Japanese learners. They will also tell you how to get an address in Japan for registration from Amazon Japan. I know that this is something that you guys are always looking for. I would recommend you to take a look at this article for that. Then for alternatives, I hear that the website CD Japan and the website Japanese Bookstore could be alternatives, but the problem is I think that their catalog is quite limited. If you guys know about any other way to get Japanese books online, then leave them in the comments. But for me, since I haven't used them myself, I can't really recommend anything. Now, shopping physically, even if you are not in Japan, if you live in any of the countries that I'm putting on the screen right now, you may have access to a Kinokuniya bookstore, so a physical Japanese bookstore in your country, so you should check where they are located, because definitely going to a Kinokuniya is going to be much easier for you to get Japanese books than finding them online. If you don't live in any of these countries, then you can look for any local Asian literature bookstore that you have in your area, in your country, in your city that sells Japanese books. And then I have actually another advice for you here, which is to take a look at where your local Japan embassy or consulate is, because some of the time in some countries they have adjacent to that embassy or consulate, or linked to the embassy or consulate, a Japanese library. Actually, they're usually filled with books requested by Japanese expatriates, and you can also make requests for books yourself. So obviously those can be also a great place for you to start when you want to get Japanese books. So guys, that will be it actually for today's video and everything I wanted to tell you under the topic of how to start reading in Japanese. I hope that this was insightful. Reading in Japanese is really challenging. It is a very long process to start reading in Japanese and start feeling comfortable. So you can't really expect miracles there, but in today's video, I really tried to give you simple steps that you can follow so that you feel the least amount of resistance possible when you start reading in Japanese. But it will definitely be a road paved with obstacles. I do believe that if you are willing to go on this path and face those challenges with a good mindset and a growth mindset, and understanding that yes, the path is difficult, but at the same time difficulty means that you are growing and you are learning, then I am certain that with time you will succeed and one day you will feel comfortable reading in Japanese. Even if now it may seem like an impossible task, it is not impossible. I'm telling you, believe me on this, it is not impossible. The only thing you need to do is to start. You learn your kana, you follow the steps that I've covered earlier, you get the right tools, the right reading materials for you, you're set. You can start your own journey. Thank you for watching today's video, guys. If you have any more questions, please leave them down below. Today's video was the 5th video in my Reading in Japanese series, which I hope you're still liking. And as for me, I will see you in my next video on the channel. Bye bye! Mata ne!